What's going on, guys? It's New York Prepper here. I just wanted to do a video about how to deal with Marauders after SHTF. Um, I've done videos about Marauders before. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about Marauders. If you don't know what they are, I'll give you guys a quick definition. But in this video, I'm going to propose one way to deal with Marauders, and this is the way that I would most likely handle Marauders or any kind of superior force. When I say superior force, I'm talking about a force that has more manpower and more firepower than I do. So a superior force would be, let's say there's 5 guys surrounding my house and I'm by myself with my fiance. That's a superior force because each of those 5 guys has a rifle, and there's 5 of them, so they can direct much more firepower onto me than I can direct onto them. They can surround me and have overlapping fields of fire, and they can direct fire on me from multiple angles. So that's a superior force. So in this video, I'm going to propose one way to even the playing field when you have to deal with a larger force than you, and it's a historically proven tactic for defeating a larger force, a military tactic, and you're gonna have to watch the rest of the video so you know what tactic that is. I'm gonna save it for the end. Some of you military guys out there probably already know what that is, or you may have some suspicions on what that is, but this is the way that I plan to handle Marauders or some type of armed gang of outlaws post SHTF that surround my house or my bug out location or my bug in location, wherever that happens to be. This is one of the ways that I would most likely deal with it. So stick with me, and we'll do a discussion on it. So first, I'm going to do a definition of Marauders. I've done a video on this in my Prepping 101 series. I defined what a Marauder is, but I'm going to redefine it now for some of you newer preppers, so this way you guys understand what I define as a Marauder. My definition of a Marauder may be different than your definition, so I actually put together some notes today because I was thinking about it, and Marauders is something that I think a lot of preppers always think about. It's something that a lot of preppers prepare for is large groups of armed bad guys that are gonna pose a threat to them or their families. That's what a lot of preppers prep for, and I think my proposal for how to deal with Marauders is probably the best I've seen on YouTube, and it's a very underestimated way of handling Marauders. So, and it's a way that pretty much everybody could handle them and succeed in defeating them. So we're gonna start the video now. I'm gonna read off of my laptop here, which I took notes on so I don't forget anything. So I wrote like a whole page. I'm just going to read from it. So what are Marauders? So in my definition of Marauders is armed groups of outlaws post SHTF who will go door to door or neighborhood to neighborhood to pillage. And the best example of this is Negan from The Walking Dead. In the TV show The Walking Dead, which is on the AMC channel, if you haven't really been watching TV lately, or if you've been somewhere around in Antarctica the last 10 years and you don't know what The Walking Dead is, it's basically a TV show about the zombie apocalypse, and it follows a group of survivors that are led by a former deputy sheriff who's played by what's his name, Andrew Lincoln. He plays the protagonist, and he leads like a group of survivors in a world that's basically post zombie apocalypse. And so I'm going to use that as an example. So in The Walking Dead, there's a bad guy later on in the TV show called Negan, and Negan is a very savage bad guy who was probably a former, gang member, or looks like he could have been a biker at some point before the zombie apocalypse. And what he does is he creates a group of other bad guys, and they band together, and he leads the group of bad guys to conquer, occupy, rape, and pillage other groups of survivors and survivor communities. And Negan's group is well armed and sophisticated, and they are even trained. So they train themselves so that they're more deadly and they're more, effective when they do those raids on innocent survivor communities. And it says that, and they had huge numbers, and they had their own base. Negan had a big group, and he had his own base, and then he grew in size by overtaking survival groups and communities and taking all of their supplies, including their weapons. And once he did that, he would force the people in the communities to go into forced labor, where they would grow food and work in order to sustain him and his group of bad guys. So basically, he's just like a giant marauder group. And so that's a good example of a marauder. It doesn't have to be that big. It could be smaller, So your marauder group may not be as big or sophisticated as Negan's group, but they could range from a small group of 5 or 10 armed men up to the size of Negan's group. And so the question is, how will you protect your family if a group like that surrounds your home or your neighborhood? You, as the man of your house, will have a disadvantage to defeat so many men. Eventually, you will become overwhelmed and run out of ammo, supplies, or food. They can surround your home or area and make it difficult for you to do anything or go anywhere, and basically force you to surrender by wearing you down slowly. This is a classic siege tactic. And they can also cut off your access to different resources once they surround you. They could just basically surround your house or your bug out location, your bug in location, or your community. If you have like a survival community or a prepper group, these bad guys will band together with other bad guys, and they're going to surround your neighborhood or surround your house, and they're going to go door to door, neighborhood to neighborhood, trying to basically steal supplies and having their way, with whatever they want to do with the people there. And they can cut off your access to resources. If, let's say, your community is dependent on a certain river, they can dam the river and redirect it, so this way you don't have water, and they can just wait until you naturally just get worn out, from not having enough water. Or they could block off roads that are critical for you to get in and out. They can cut your electrical supplies. If you have like a power line that goes to your house, they can cut it. So they can do a lot of things to basically weaken you. Once they have you surrounded and they're pinning you down with, more firepower than you can shoot back at them, they can wear you down slowly. So this is a serious situation. After they take your supplies, you don't know what they will do to you or your family. Rape, murder, torture, or human trafficking is on the table. And me personally, I believe that sex trafficking will become even bigger after SHTF than it is now. And I think that like sex trafficking or human trafficking is going to become like very big after SHTF, because bad guys are going to traffic people in order to make money. It's going to be like a currency, kind of like it is now. They're going to be bartering with people, so rather than trading a cow for $10,000, they're going to trade your kid or your wife to some freaking sicko, and they're going to get supplies in return, or guns or something like that. So they may not necessarily be coming for your supplies. They could be coming after your family. They could be cannibals. They could be just trying to get revenge on you because you're in a different economic bracket than they are. It could be a racial thing, if they're racists or whatever. It could be a hate crime thing. So you don't know what their motivation is, but you know that they're a larger force. They have more weapons, they have more men, and they're surrounding you and your community. And you have to somehow defeat them. Otherwise, you're going to, be at their mercy. And that's not a position you want to be in. You never want to be at their mercy, because you don't know what they're going to do and what they want to do to you, or what they're going to do for you, to your family. They may not just want your supplies. It's not as straightforward as you think that, oh yeah, we'll just give them, some supplies and let them have it and they'll leave us alone. It may be more than that. They may want to conquer your whole neighborhood and kick you out, or they may want to, sell your kids and your wife into, sex trafficking or human trafficking, or they may want to rape, women in your neighborhood, or, whatever the situation is. They may want to have their way and do whatever they want, and all their sick fantasies, they want to bring them to life. So you need to have a way to deal with these marauders, and because it's a very serious situation. So protecting your family from large groups of armed marauders is something that every prepper thinks about. The first defense that most people think of is to band together with other preppers or neighbors, which creates a strength in numbers situation. So basically that's like what most preppers think of. They say, well, you can deter a large group of marauders by banding together with your neighbors, creating prepper groups now before SHTF hits, having a network of people that will join up together and protect each other, protect each other's families. And that's one way to deal with it. But in this video, I want to talk about, what if, even though you have your prepper group, even though you have your community and people are armed and trained, and let's say you still run into a force that's larger than yours. You may have 200 guys and they may all have, weapons, AR-15s, AK-47s that they stole or that they got off the black market, and they may surround your whole community, and you may have like 20 families there with 10 or 20 guys that are actually capable of fighting and shooting. 10 or 20 guys, no matter how well trained they are and how physically fit they are and how experienced they are, even Navy SEALs are going to have a hard time against 200 guys that are surrounding them. And it's been proven. You can look at it historically. There's many times where even the most elite special operations units were surrounded by terrorists or insurgents, and they were pinned down, and they were in trouble. And like, for example, Black Hawk Down is a classic example. But there's so many different examples. So if it's difficult for a special operations unit, that trains and shoots every day, to be able to repel a large force like that, do you really think that you and your community are going to be able to repel a large group like that? I personally think it's going to be tough, especially if they're determined and they have a lot of weapons and they have resources. They can just wear you down, and so, and another thing with special operators too is that they're well equipped, well trained. They have the best equipment that money can buy, the best weapons, night vision goggles, intelligence, all kinds of things that, you're not going to have access to when you're, after an SHTF situation, and, you're not going to have access to the latest and greatest in military gadgets, So that's something to think about to all you guys out there that think, oh yeah, I'll just, grab my AR-15 and, take them all down by myself. It sounds great on paper, but when you have 10 guys, or and there's bullets flying through your walls, it's a different story. So here we go. Let me continue. So this defense and the strength in numbers, it definitely works. And the best comparison to that is like, a herd of buffalo when they protect the cows and the calves from lions or wolves. They band together in a group. And so that's what, preppers are going to try to do. But you definitely don't want to be alone, because when you're alone, you're much weaker. But, in a real world situation, most of your neighbors are not going to be expert shooters or gun enthusiasts or in combat shape, physically fit or mentally fit to kill other people, and do the things that are necessary to defend your community. A lot of people may be pacifists. They are not combative people by nature. You know, most Americans are not, you know, fighters, physical fighters. You know, most Americans are office workers and never, you know, got into a fight or never even did any kind of physical labor in their life. So for you to all of a sudden think that you're going to train your neighbors and get together with them and create some kind of a group, unless your neighbors are like you and they're also preppers and they're also hunters and gun owners, in that case, then yeah, then you have a better chance. But you know, most people, most Americans nowadays are not, you know, fighters. They're not, you know, gun owners. So that's something to consider. And that's going to be a tremendous disadvantage when your community gets surrounded by a group of marauders. So let's say, for the sake of this video, that, you know, your group is surrounded by superior force. And so one thing right off the bat is, when you're facing a superior force, it makes no sense to try to match them with conventional tactics, because they have you outnumbered. So, you know, trying to go like straight up against them in a conventional way, in a conventional firefight, is going to be a disadvantage to you. So, you know, you have to think about some other way that you can repel them or defeat them. And it's not necessarily going to be a conventional, you know, force on force, you know, like infantry tactics type thing. You may have to do something else to defeat them. You have to think outside the box, because it's this, the best example is like, you know, if you're boxing, you know, and you're going up against Mike Tyson, you know, and or not necessarily Mike Tyson. Let's say you're in a boxing match and you have a guy that's twice your size. You know, you're not going to be able to go blow for blow with that guy. You know, you're going to have to dance around him. You're going to have to hit him with jabs. You're going to have to wear him down, get him tired. And then once he's tired and there's an opening, then you go for a hook and you try to, you know, knock him out as quickly as possible, you know. But if you try to go blow for blow, you know, with a larger opponent, it's whether it's in war or whether it's in boxing or whether it's a street fight, it doesn't matter. You know, you have to adjust your tactics. You can't match that, you know, 1-to-1. It's just not going to work for you. You know, it's just like if somebody's going to try to, you know, run me off the side of the road with a pickup truck and I'm driving a little 4-door sedan. If I try to ram them with my car, it's not going to do anything. So I have to figure out some other way, you know. So you have to think in your head, you know, what can you do, you know, that will allow you to create an opening where you can, you know, either repel them or gain some kind of advantage against them, whether it's to multiply your force somehow, you know, using different unconventional tactics to defeat them, you know, because if you go blow for blow with a larger opponent, it's just not going to work for you. It's going to be, you're going to lose, you're going to have casualties. You know, the people that are less trained are going to, in your group, are going to sustain casualties. And then as you sustain casualties, it's going to make you weaker and weaker, because you're going to have less guns pointed at them. And then they're going to slowly be able to close the noose on you and tighten the noose, and then you're going to be finished, you know. So so my proposal is very simple. So the first thing you have to remember is that marauders are the wolves of society, and you know, whether they're people or whether they're wolves or whether they're lions, any kind of predatory being, whether it's a human being or an animal, they always like to go after easy prey. You know, it doesn't matter what kind of animal it is, 2-legged, 4-legged, 6-legged, doesn't matter, you know. It's just the nature of life, you know. Living things want to preserve themselves. If they have to go out of their way and endanger themselves to kill something else to live, then it's not worth it for them. You know, they'll find an easier target that they don't have to hurt themselves in order to you know, just like a pack of wolves. You know, packs of wolves, they don't go after the strongest moose, or they don't go after a full-grown bison, you know, or a full-grown elk. You know, they usually go after the smaller elks or the smaller moose, the newborns, the calves, you know, the sick bison that are older and are worn down by the winter or the deep snow. that's what they go after. They don't go after a full-grown, bison in the prime of its life, 3,000 pounds, because they know they're going to sustain serious casualties trying to do that. So just knowing that gives you a little bit of an advantage, So they're going to try to go after an easy target, and the goal is to make yourself as hard of a target as possible, because once they realize that they're going to start sustaining a lot of casualties and they see their friend's head getting blown off, they're going to think twice about it. They're going to say, well, maybe this isn't worth it. We lost like 10 guys already. Should we really continue, trying to take this prepper group? Maybe we should go down the street and, find an easier victim where they're not fighting back as hard, So just knowing that will give you a little bit of an advantage. So that's something to think about. So finally, my tactic is, obviously you want to try to get them to go somewhere else and leave you alone. So whatever means that you do to do that is up to you. But me personally, I would do that by using snipers and long-range precision fire. And what this does is it does two things. First of all, it's gonna scare them away and mess with them, and it's gonna make you a hard target, because snipers have been used in war for hundreds of years, and they have successfully been used in war to defeat larger forces or to psychologically break them down to the point where they're afraid to enter certain areas because they know that a sniper is operating there. And so, like, if we look at history, we can see examples of this. So we have the best examples that I could think of is Simo Haya and Vasily Zaitsev. So Simo Haya, if you guys are not familiar, he was a Finnish sniper who during the Winter War was when it was like the beginning of World War II, 1939, I think, to 1940. The Soviet Union attacked Finland, and so there was a guy named Simo Haya who was a Finnish guy, and he became a sniper during that war. And what he did was he killed like hundreds of Russian soldiers, and he's known to be one of the most famous snipers in history. And he successfully repelled a lot of the Soviet forces in the area where he was conducting his sniper operations, because they were simply scared to enter the area that they knew that he was there. So they were afraid that at any moment they could just be shot. So they didn't want to go into that area. Another example is very well known is at the Battle of Stalingrad. There was Vasily Zaitsev. He was the famous Enemy at the Gates sniper. So if you ever see the movie Enemy at the Gates, basically Vasily was a Russian guy who, or Soviet, and he fought against the Nazis in Stalingrad when the Nazis initiated Operation Barbarossa, where they were going to basically try to overtake Russia and attack Moscow. But they ended up failing, obviously. But they attacked Russia from the south, and they came through towards Stalingrad, and their goal was to capture Stalingrad and then move up north to Moscow and basically cut off Moscow from the south, so they can't be reinforced from the south, and then push up into Moscow and take Moscow. But Vasily Zaitsev, he was able to repel a lot of the Nazi troops in his area, and he became famous for that. So in this situation, with the Marauders, the way that I would handle it is I would, first of all, one of the advantages of long-range precision fire, especially a sniper rifle and sniper calibers, if you know anything about firearms, a lot of the sniper calibers have, they retain a lot of lethality beyond a long distance. And conventional small arms like, AK-47s, AR-15s, most of them are not going to be very effective past a couple of 100 yards, because the energy starts to go down, and the speed of the bullet, the velocity, drops tremendously, so the bullet loses its stability. It can get easily deflected by wind. It can drop dramatically from where the gun was shot to, if let's say you're shooting at a target like 400 yards, it's going to drop dramatically, especially if you're using like a AK-47 or something. So what that does is, if you have a sniper rifle and you're shooting at somebody who has an AK, and you're like 800 yards away, or even 1,000 yards away, let's say, but not even that far, you could even just be like 800 yards, and you're shooting at someone at that distance, they can aim at you and start emptying their whole magazine at you, and they may not be able to hit you, or it may not even be lethal. And if you have decent cover and decent concealment, chances are they're not going to be able to do anything to you. So that's why in this situation, a sniper would be very effective against a group of marauders, because first of all, psychologically, it's going to mess with them. If let's say they're trying to attack your community, if they're trying to attack your community, and all of a sudden they see their fellow marauders dropping dead for no reason, and they just see bullets ricocheting all around them, and they don't know where it's coming from, that's going to mess with them a little bit, because at that point they lost control. They can't eliminate the threat so easily because they don't know where it is. They can't triangulate on it. It's very far away, and it won't be easy for them to triangulate on you. If you're, let's say, a sniper, and you're aiming at, you're trying to take down a group of marauders, it's not going to be that easy for them to triangulate you if you move, between each shot. You don't just stay in one spot and keep shooting. You take your shot and then you move. You're constantly moving, so they can't triangulate you. And just that long range precision fire, even if they start shooting in your direction, if you're like 1,000 yards away, or 800 yards away, or even 500 yards away, they're the conventional rifle bullets, unless these marauders are well trained and they have special weapons, and they know what they're doing. They're not going to be able to hit you at that distance. They're just not trained enough. They don't have the proper equipment. Even somebody who's trained with an AR-15, and someone who's a good shooter and shoots their AR-15 all the time, you can't beat physics and ballistics. It's just, at long distances, conventional small arms are not effective, and that's where the sniper rifle gives you advantage, because you can start taking these guys out and moving, and that'll mess with them. They're not going to know where to return fire from, and that could do one thing. It could dissuade them from attacking your group altogether and force them to leave. They may say, well, this is not worth it. We got this sniper out here. He's taking all our guys out. We can't drop him. Let's just quit, and we'll find an easier target where we're not going to be sustaining so many casualties. And that's one thing. Another thing is that can also create an opening. So when you have your sniper attacking the marauders, and it creates a distraction. And then at that point, your group can counterattack, and that opening will allow your group to counterattack. So it'll create an opening, So a sniper is a very effective way, in my opinion, at counteracting a larger force. And, it's been proven historically to work. And, another thing that you could do too is, if you have a prepper group, or if you have a neighborhood, you could try to train people and go to the range with them and teach them how to shoot long range, and it's a little bit of a skill. You have to learn about ballistics, and you have to, practice, proper marksmanship fundamentals, so so you're making good, consistent shots at long distance. It's not easy to do, but it's not impossible either. And you could potentially train people even after the grid goes down. You could train a group of guys in your community, and you could have like 5 snipers, and 5 snipers that can hit, decent targets at 800 yards is a very dangerous force, in my opinion, especially if you spread them out all around your community, and they're overwatching the community, and they have rotating shifts, that can be very dangerous for any kind of marauder that's going to try to come in and, you know, mess with you, or mess with your community. You know, having that group of snipers overwatching the area, you know, with overlapping fields of fire, they can shoot from different angles. Their fire is going to overlap. It's going to hit the bad guys from every angle, and they're not going to know what to do. They're going to panic, and they're just going to give up and leave, you know. And that's my recommendation on how to deal with marauders and larger forces after SHTF. So, and that's personally how I plan to deal with them. You know, long range shooting is a hobby of mine, and marksmanship, I'm a good shooter, and I can shoot long distance as well. So you know, that's one way that I plan on dealing with marauders after SHTF. So you know, that's, in my opinion, probably one of the best ways to do it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, tell me what you guys think. You know, leave a comment, give me some feedback, tell me if you think my ideas, you know, realistic or not. I think it would work, and as long as your field of fire is not going to go into your own house and hit your own family or hit your own, you know, group, you know, that's critical. You have to make sure that you're not shooting into your own, you know, your friendlies, you know, your own people. You know, you got to make sure that you're doing that properly. But otherwise, I think deploying snipers against a larger force, a group of marauders, would be extremely effective in defeating them and getting them to go away. So that's pretty much it. You know, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'm going to be making more soon. Take care, God bless, and I'll see you in the comments. All right, bye.